Hi, everybody. How are you? Welcome to episode 12 of the Really, Really Badly podcast. Today, I am excited to be talking about a topic that's been on my mind for like the last year or so. It's kind of a big idea that encompasses a lot. It's called living between the scenes. We'll explain kind of what that means and talking about liminal spaces a little bit. Talk about what that means and how it's relevant to our kind of current generation and kind of trying to figure out what is going on there, what may be the cause of some things, and potentially how we can learn to live between the scenes better and different strategies for doing that. So thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for being here. As always, if you have any thoughts on the episode or want to follow up at all, give us an email at reallyBadlyPodcast@gmail.com. or leave us a rating or a comment. Any of those things help. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And I think that's all.
Yeah.
Let's get it going.
Please with the ratings. That will help.
That will help.
All right. So how are we going to start this one out? We've got kind of two ideas here that go really well together. Do you want to start with the one you introduced me to or the one that I introduced you to?
I think we should start with the phrase itself, between the scenes, which I believe was the one that you brought to the table.
It is, yes.
Yeah. So can you explain a little bit about it for me?
So I call it living between the scenes, and it's this. It was about a year ago, and I was talking with my parents, and we were kind of talking about my generation, just post college, trying to figure things out, what's going on. Maybe a little bit before that, like late high school through college and then post college. And, my parents aren't like the typical, all millennials kind of suck and they're just like lazy and don't know what they're doing with their life, blah, blah, blah. But one of the things kind of coming up was just what's going on? Cause there's something here, right? Like these people don't suck, but there's just, something's going on, right? You're talking about
millennials.
Yeah. Kind of in general. Yeah. And I had this, it's funny because this is when I had just moved out for, a few months, and I actually had this thought on the way to going to visit them at their house, half an hour away. So it was kind of funny how it was just coming to fruition in my head. And yeah, since then I've been thinking about it a lot. I think that it's one of those, I call it my magnum opus of thoughts, or maybe it will be one day. I think it would make just a good, I don't know, it's a kind of an all encompassing kind of philosophy in this area. So far. That being said, I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying this is the definitive, what's going on. I just think it's a good way to phrase kind of some things that I've noticed. So what I mean by living between the scenes is I think that our generation has a hard time living between the scenes, and we need to learn how to do that better. And so kind of how I've explained it in the past is, and there's many aspects that have contributed to this. One of them being technology, social media. The fact that most of my close friends are hundreds, if not thousands of miles away from me, like you are right now. You're in a different country. And we communicate and we keep up this good friendship, but it's at a distance, right? And we have all this social media that kind of puts us at the center to frame our lives how we want to and follow people and see all of their highlights and their good moments. And so it's caused us to really seek after and desire these, what I call scenes, these big moments. So if you think about a movie, right, we all we want these big, grandiose, bigger than life things in our lives. So that's why I think a lot of our generation loves travel. I think that's why we, are really drawn to social media and posting things about our lives that are great, these kind of big scenes. And because we are so, the entertainment industry it so saturates our life, and we are just constantly being shown, celebrity lives and through movies, through games, through TV, whatever it might be, and just following celebrities in general. I think we have this unrealistic desire for our lives to always be this just great, huge, big thing. and that we
Sure.
feel like that's how life should be, and the only way we feel fulfilled is if something like that is happening or going on. But if you look at a movie, the movie only shows you the big scenes, right? But what we don't see are the hours and hours of stuff that goes on in between in these characters' lives, right? Because
Totally.
that would be like the most boring movie in the world if
Yeah.
you saw everything. It would
Yeah.
just be like bleh.
I think on average a movie has around 10 or 11 scenes. Like that's what makes
Okay,
a good
wow.
movie, I think, is
Okay.
11 scenes, and that's like this huge arc, right? It's like so much happens.
Yeah. Well, and especially in some movies take place over a really long period of time as well. Like could cover months of time, but they pare it down into 2-3 hours, right? You think of the Lord of the Rings, like a big epic. You don't see the scenes where they're just, plodding through the rain hundreds of miles, just like freezing cold and like hating life because everything sucks right now. No. You see the awesome epic battles, like smacking orcs' heads off their shoulders and, doing great, amazing big things. Because that's what makes a good movie. Because we get inspired by movies, and that there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that the oversaturation of all this stuff has kind of led us to this unrealistic expectation for our own lives. And so, so that's my thing. Like, we need to learn how to live between the scenes, because that's where a lot of life actually happens. And not to take away from those big moments that we all do get to have and that we all get to enjoy, but understanding that you have to have those times in between scenes for the big scenes, right? If you're just always chasing the grandiose, the big, these things that make you feel amazing or things that you can post that are going to be great, I think eventually you're going to sit down, look back, and just be like, man, like I don't know where I'm going. Like, I'm lost. I can't figure out what's happening. Like, why do I feel like I'm purposeless? What am I doing with my life? Those kind of questions start popping up a whole lot more, because the only thing that you've been pursuing are these big scenes, but you're not doing anything to build something or to go towards, a goal or anything like that. And so, so that's kind of the idea there.
Gotcha. So it's this idea of like chasing these big scenes, but that are kind of unfocused in a way. Like, they're just kind of random. It's just for the sake of chasing big scenes because of how celebrity, like you said, celebrity culture and Instagram culture and travel, making all this stuff grandiose. It's kind of chasing all that stuff without actually like focusing where your scenes want to go, or without focusing on the in between, I guess.
Well, yes, that, and too, like, I think that a big scene just for the big scene's sake is kind of empty. If my whole life is focused on posting about how like great and amazing my life is, and I'm just focused on like that next big trip I can take so that I can post a bunch of pictures or whatever it might be, or like that next job that's gonna pay a lot more and make me feel fulfilled.
I see.
I think that you just kind of lose sight of what's important, I guess, and those things can be empty in and of themselves after a while.
Gotcha.
And it's just unrealistic, to be honest. I mean, think about it, right? Like, if I'm just constantly like, okay, like, let me go on the next road trip, or I'm going to go visit this country, or I'm going to go da. Like, pretty soon I'm going to be sitting down like, wow, like, I have no money. I can't really like be a dependent human being like I want to be. I'm now stuck at like my parents' house because I can't afford to do anything else. 'Cause I've been spending money on all these big scenes, if you will. And I'm kind of going nowhere. Like, what's up? And I think a lot of people kind of hit that moment, and then it kind of, I guess, like when reality hits, it's like, whoa, okay. And I think that it's important to find meaning and purpose in those between the scenes times. I mean, look, it's mundane. It's not sexy. It is kind of just, the grind. It's not the most fun. You kind of have to work to find that deeper meaning. But I think it can be done, and I think that over the last, like year and a half, 2 years since I've been out of my parents' house, I have really, that's kind of been like my focus. Like, how do I find that? How do I live between the scenes well? So there's a couple of things I think that we can do that help that. But before we get into that, can you explain the word or idea that you had? Because I think it really pairs well with this idea of living between the scenes.
Totally. Yeah. And you already mentioned it. The idea that I think you brought this idea of yours to me about a year ago, right? You used
That
the
sounds
phrase.
about right. Yeah. When I
Yeah,
started using that phrase.
totally. Between the scenes. We were even thinking about naming the podcast Between the Scenes, but then we realized that it sounded too much like a film or a movie themed podcast.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those things that like the phrase is great and it captures a lot, but until you've explained it to someone, it's not a self-explanatory phrase. So like
Totally.
I said, maybe one day it'll be like my magnum opus idea and I can like write a book on it
Yeah.
or something. But
Oh, I love it.
yeah, we'll see what it
We
goes.
went for something much more obvious with really, really badly.
And just so much better, man.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe not obvious, but definitely better. I agree. Yeah. So, and you used the phrase already. Is liminal space is the one that I thought of when you brought this idea of between the scenes to me. And a liminal space, liminal, comes from the Latin word limens, which means threshold. And it's defined. Richard Rohr, who's a famous Catholic priest and famous author, he has some awesome books. He defines it as it is when you have left the tried and true, and it is a time of entering or beginning, where transformation takes place. And so, yeah, the idea that psychology has kind of taken this phrase and had it mean now is kind of this in between. Yeah, where you've kind of finished with one thing that was familiar, and now you're probably moving into another thing because that's how life works, but you don't know what that other thing is. And it's kind of this lull, this in between, like you said. Yeah, and this phrase was introduced to me by a mentor of mine when I was I was at an in-between place. She kind of brought it up. And yeah, I looked up more about it, and it's kind of loosely defined as a time where we don't know how to navigate, or we often get paralyzed because we don't know what's coming next. So we flee to something that we might already know, or we just might stay stuck because we aren't sure quite how to move forward, or we don't know what's waiting for us. Yeah, so that's kind of the idea behind a liminal space.
Yeah, and I love, I think this really makes sense in the context of like where we're talking about the kind of this stage of life, like, kind of post college, or if you don't go to college, like post high school, like, moving out of your parents' house, kind of like young adult area of life, because up till then, everything's been so structured for us. Like you said, familiar, like we know exactly what we're doing. We know when we got to do it. We know exactly how to do it well if we choose to. And I found I looked up liminality on Wikipedia, and I thought they had a great, concept or explanation of this concept. So do you mind if I just read that?
Go for it.
Real quick. So they said on here, in anthropology, liminality, like you said, from the Latin word limen, or whatever, a threshold, is the quality of ambiguity or disorientation that occurs in the middle stages of rituals when participants no longer hold their pre-ritual status but have not yet begun the transition to the status they will hold when the ritual is complete. During a ritual's liminal stage, participants stand at a threshold between their previous way of structuring their identity, time, or community, and a new way which the ritual establishes. And I thought that was crazy. And now, obviously, like the word ritual, they're not using as like, some kind of like weird, like, tribal dance ritual thing. But, the ritual of like schooling, right? Or the structure that we have,
Sure.
the ritual of the family, all this stuff. But the part of it that I thought was really good was when they're between their previous way of structuring identity, time, or community into a new way. And I think that's what so much of this is tied up in, is the reason people tend, I think, when they get into this kind of liminal space, they tend to just want to chase these, what I call big scenes, is because it's easy to find an identity in something like that. It's easy to see the oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Like when you get a like, you feel affirmed. It's easy to get that
affirmation.
Sorry.
Sure.
It's easy to get that affirmation. It's so clear. It's very like, I do this and this is gonna happen. Like it feels good for a second. And I think that's why it's just so easy to go to this, what we see in pop culture, entertainment, movie, social media scene. It's kind of easy to fall into. And I think a lot of that has to do with that identity, and how you spend your time. Cause this transition in, family, community, it's all going to be changing. And, so I really like that description. And I thought it was really good. So
these are two big concepts,
Yeah,
we're probably only going to scratch the surface today, but I like that connection between the two. It's very cool.
And that's why I think it fits really well in what we're trying to do here with Really Really Badly is, and they're large ideas, so I would encourage people to maybe just chew on it a little bit, but they pair really really well together. Now there are a couple like cures to this, or ways that I think we can kind of make this better. And like I said, this is something I've been chewing on for a year, so I'm sure I'm going to come up with more ways to kind of deal with this or to approach it. But I've got a couple. But before we get there, if you want to share, and of course you don't have to, there's other people listening, but have you had, or what was, or what is, if it's still going on, like kind of the hardest like liminal space or transition or between the scenes time that you have had? And we'll start there. And if you found a way kind of out of it, or how to best deal with it, you can share that. Or if it's still going on, just
Sure, totally. I was wondering this myself because I feel like I've gone through a lot of liminal spaces. I joke with my roommates often that I have an identity crisis once every year. I don't know if anyone else can relate to that at all, but they always tease me about that. It's like, oh, it's your time of the year to have a identity crisis, isn't it? Yeah, it totally is. But I think it was probably about a year and a half ago. I had a difficult transition coming out of university. I think a lot of people do. And kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do next and where all my time and my energy were going to go. Had a very difficult breakup, where I did not handle it well at all. I really hurt the other person's feelings quite a lot, and kind of dealing with some of the shame of that, and trying to move past the relationship itself, and trying to just figure out what I was going to do. Just all of it kind of created this weird liminal space for sure. And it kind of was coming to a head, about a year and a half ago. I was half packed, basically. Just told myself, okay, I'm done with this whole Vancouver after university thing. I can't figure out what I'm doing. I can't see a path. So I packed up most of my stuff and I was ready to move back to Colorado with my parents. And I went to one of my mentors, and I was just talking with her about all this stuff, telling her my plan. And and this is when she told me about the idea of a liminal space. And she said, I think you should just sit in this, whatever this liminal space is. I think you should just sit in it for a little while and just call it what it is. It's this weird in between where you don't know what's going on, and just sit in it and see what you can decipher, see what your emotions are telling you, see what, if you're pulled in any direction. Don't just run off to Colorado because you think, well, something else has to happen and I don't know what it is, so I'm just going to go, or I failed too much here, so I can't stay. She was like, no, just stay. And it was great because it was difficult for sure. There was some stuff I had to work through, and needed some help there for sure. But I kind of came to a realization that I didn't want to go back to Colorado. And I did want to stay here in Vancouver. I did want to give it a go. I didn't really know what giving it a go meant. I didn't know where I was going or what I was doing. But by sitting in that liminal space, I kind of realized the potential of where I was at, and the fact that I did have great friends here, and I did have a cool community, and I did have a theater I enjoyed working with. I had a decent job, and I was kind of able to see maybe all this mundane stuff, if you will. None of it was flashy or sexy, or, I couldn't, if people asked me, what are you doing with your life right now? I would have just said, I don't know. And so it's not a big scene like you were saying, but I realized I did have a lot, and I had a lot of potential. And through sitting with it and just relaxing and accepting the liminal space for what it was, I was able to, relax, calm down a bit, get through some of that emotional stuff, and start building a life that I could enjoy. And so that's kind of a long version of my experience with the liminal space.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, I love that. And as much as I want to be like, curse you, Brandon's mentor, because I could have had him back.
Yeah.
I think it's really, and I joke. I think it's great that they were able to speak into your life this way and kind of show you this a new idea. And I think I think you would probably say that was what was best for you, is to kind of just, sit in that and keep going through maybe some of the hard stuff, not just be so like, I gotta feel good. I gotta feel right. Like I gotta get this feeling out of my life, and just like jumping from one thing to the next, and, trying to like chase a certain feeling of like, goodness or something, which I think is like so far too easy to do. And I know I have definitely done that in my life multiple times. And I think, I mean, you hit something on the head, when she's like to sit in this, right? To just, I call it, being okay with not being okay. Like, I think that that's something that not just our generation, but everyone in our, this Western culture needs to learn how to do better. Is just, can we learn how to be okay with not being okay? I think sometimes we want to shoot straight to the fix, or to like making it better, that we miss what could happen through a process, through a growing space of time that isn't pleasant, but can grow you, and that's important. We all have to have those areas in our life. And if we're so focused on just getting like past it without learning anything, like, then it's going to have to happen again. And it's going to have to keep happening until you finally are ready to just be okay with not being okay. Mm-hmm. And I love what you said when you're like, if someone were to ask me, what am I doing with my life? I'd be like, which is so not what we want to do. Because when someone asks you, what are you doing with your life? You're like, okay, like I got to like come up with something great. Oh, I'm doing this and this and this, and like I'm headed this way. And you make it sound as if you know what you're doing, but you're right. Like inside you're like, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that's honest. It's authentic. And that's how you actually move forward, rather than like feeling you have to have this like perfect elevator pitch of like where you're going in life. If that's not true, I mean, if that's true, awesome, great. Like that's fantastic. But so many of us don't have that yet. There's this pressure to, when someone asks you that, to just go straight to like your social media profile, like, projection of yourself.
Right.
And start like talking like, what's going on, when, man, like, I don't know, like, and that's fine. That's totally cool. I think that should be okay.
Yeah. I think that the liminal space is really, it has obviously very negative connotations, and just this idea of being between things is looked at negatively. But I think, I think as a whole, we need to realize that they're not only important, but they're necessary. Like they're going to happen. Something in your life is going to end, for better or for worse, and you have to move on. But that in between needs to happen. Like, take your Lord of the Rings analogy, for instance. They had to get to Mordor somehow. They had to go through all that boring stuff. And if we're always trying to just, no, I want to skip that. I don't want to learn. I don't want to think about it, whatever. Well, you're not going to get to where you're going next.
Yeah. So, yeah, totally. Yeah. And this also, then again ties back into the last week's episode about goals. Like, so if you are feeling this liminal space and feeling like it's just uncomfortable and weird and awkward, like, okay, just sit down, be okay with not being okay, maybe figure out some goals if that's what you need to do, and then find meaning in the mundane. And so, sorry.
So I was actually wondering, are you going to tell us what your experience with kind of a liminal space or between the scenes is? I mean, if you
Yeah.
have more thoughts, we can
No,
keep
no.
going. I don't want to like
I was gonna get
jump off the
into
train.
no, I was gonna get into like the what we can do about that, but yeah, I can share that. I think I've had a
If you feel
couple.
comfortable.
Yeah, I do totally. So yeah, the spring semester of my senior year, I had some like weird stuff happen with basically the major I was gonna go that I was in. Some changes happened where you didn't need a degree to do that anymore, and so things were feeling weird, and I didn't really know if I wanted to do that anyway. I was kind of starting to get interested in the business like classes that I was taking, feeling very like I have no direction. I have no idea what I'm going to be doing after, when this semester's over, like then what? Like up till now in my life, yeah, I've had this is when school starts, this is when school ends. You're given a syllabus, you're given assignments, you know exactly what to do to get an A if you're willing to put in the work and the effort. You know exactly what's happening next year. You plan the next classes before they happen. And I was about to like all of that was about to come to an end, and it was like terrifying. It was like cripplingly terrifying. I remember having a conversation with my parents once. I lived in a house with two other guys, and I remember like I think I had just gotten back from work actually. And I pulled up in the driveway talking to them, and I just like sat in the car for like hours, and I was just like bawling my face off, like just completely lost, felt like a failure, with no purpose and all this stuff, and there was a lot of other stuff going on, but that was definitely a part of it. And so I ended up finding a job in Indianapolis. After that, I was dating someone who was going to school in Indianapolis for another. She had another year, I think, or 2 years. And so I wanted to be, so I moved up there to be closer. I had this job, and it was horrific. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It was a cold calling, door-to-door, like door-to-door business sales job. I am not a salesman. I know that now. I know it forever. I would consider myself to be a rather chill person, and I was having I couldn't, when I'd get back from we were working like 12-hour days. It was super stressful because it was all commission based, and so I was like, I can't survive. Like, how am I going to support myself? I'm renting this apartment. I'm trying to feed myself. And I would get home at night, and I couldn't sit still. I had to get up and just pace back and forth in my studio apartment, or get on my bike and ride it just to calm down, because I was shaking. I was had so much anxiety, and so I had the opportunity a couple months later to start this MBA program at a school, the same school that my current girlfriend was going to. And when that happened, I jumped on it. And I'm not saying that was a bad decision, because things work out the way they work out, and you can always learn, and you can always make opportunities from what life presents to you. However, now I look back and I go, man, I now have a bunch of student debt from grad school, and I'm not using that degree. I'm actually using my original degree kind of, and I've got a bunch of student debt. Why did I do that? But like I said, it all works out. And but I think I definitely jumped on that because I felt like I was in this weird space. I was doing a job that I knew I wasn't, I couldn't sustain for forever. I just felt incredibly lost and lonely. I had just moved to a brand new city where I didn't hardly know anybody. And I just left all my friends from college. I felt insanely lonely. It was the first time that I did not expect to feel lonely after college. I just didn't think it would really happen. And man, I get it now when people are I feel lonely. I'd never really before kind of understood that. And now it's man, it is a hard feeling. So anyway, so I kind of jumped ship and went to that because I feel like I was in this liminal space. And I learned from things, but I think that definitely is kind of how that played out in my life. Is I did jump this ship. I did go on to something else. And then, after throughout grad school, I ended up breaking up with this girl, and so we were no longer dating. And then instead of staying there with the job offer that I had from an internship, I ended up, going again back to Colorado, which was for the best. But I also don't know if that was maybe a little bit of I just got to start over again, kind of space. Got to be back with I had Scott, some friends here. So anyway, that's kind of the biggest one I think in my life that I've felt. There's been other ones, but that's kind of the when I think about it. And it was easy. It was so easy to go back to school too, because it was again, that schedule, I knew exactly what I was doing. Like it was just boom, so cut and dry. Everything was told to me. And so definitely jumped at that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And then I could go back to like just delay, and all it did was delay that liminal space. All it did was delay that like liminal space for another 10 months. Because then
Mm-hmm.
once I graduated, then I was like, oh, I'm back in this, like, what am I doing? Like, you know, like, and so,
Totally.
yeah, but it was good.
But I mean, knowing you through that whole thing, and and getting to talk with you as kind of it was going down, I definitely remember you becoming more comfortable with saying, "I don't know what I'm doing." As things came, I mean, you said like, "Well, I'm going to do this thing next, but I don't really like. I need to look for jobs, or I need to figure out what I need to do, or I need to, find a way to stop living with your parents." And you
Yeah.
became more comfortable with saying, I don't really know what's next, but I'm going to figure it out. I don't know. You,
Yeah.
you seem to
No,
have less of a death grip on like what you had to do. That was my experience of what you were telling me anyway, which I thought was really cool because that's a great lesson you can take from the whole thing, right?
yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, obviously, I think time had to do a little bit with that, like just kind of learning to be, okay, like this is this is not abnormal. Like it's okay to not know. So like having that extra time to figure it out. But yeah, immediately after college, it was definitely, like you said, like a death grip of not knowing what I was doing. Um, so,
Happens for a lot of people.
oh yeah, no, I think it happens to a ton of us, especially because we have and
Yeah.
it's funny because it's one of these things that it's like a curse as the result of a blessing, because like we have so much like choice and so much opportunity and are like just have so much
Yeah.
directions that we could go, that it almost like just like freezes us up. So it's like a, I don't want to use the term like good problem to have, but
As far as problems.
it's kind of from the result of like, because we have it's so good.
Mm.
Yeah, because in other places, like they might just be focused on, I gotta get food for tomorrow, and that is like, that's as far as my concerns go, and so this is what I gotta do to do that. Which sure, that might take out all the choice in this weird liminal space, but definitely would be a whole lot more stressful on a day-to-day basis, and worse off. I mean, we enjoy so much. So I guess, I mean, to wrap this up, right, like bringing up something like this big idea that's kind of hard, and like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
even if someone says, I get what you're saying, like it's valid, good, I'm with you there, but kind of what's the point? Why do we talk about all this stuff if it's just going to make us sad and depressed and be like, yeah, we knew we were screwed up, like thanks for letting us know why we're screwed up, but that doesn't help me in any
Sure.
sense. So I like to kind of go a little bit beyond that and say, okay, so what do we do with this? Like if this is the case, if this is a good analogy or a good way of describing about kind of where we find ourselves in life, and especially in this generation of ours, right? Because it can happen again any time of life, but I think especially now. What do we do about that? Like where do we go from here? So if do you have any kind of advice for people if they find themselves
Yeah,
here?
absolutely. I'm interested to hear what you have to say, but just based off experience, I have a few things I've written down. I mean, first off, we've already said it, like breathe into it, like just breathe, take a second. If you're going through something like this, it's okay to not be okay. Like you said, things take time. Ethan Renault, who I know we've mentioned before, has this fantastic, it's not really a poem, it's more of a post, but it's entitled "How to Get Over Anyone. Try this step, works every time."
Nice.
And it's this post. Have you heard this before?
It sounds vaguely familiar, but
Okay. So how to get over anyone. Wait a long, 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 long time. Works every time.
oh, I love it. That's awesome.
I love that, right? And
Dang.
whether it's getting over someone or getting over a missed opportunity or a job you didn't get or getting fired from a job, whether it's any of that stuff, time heals a lot, and realizing that if you're in between things and you're not really sure what's next, sometimes you need to acknowledge what's happened before you can move forward. And being able to acknowledge that, yes, I am in a liminal space, I am in between things, and being able to acknowledge also the emotions that come with it. I'm excited to talk about some of the stuff in some of our future podcasts, but my favorite technique for dealing with emotions, if they're really intense or when they come up, is just being able to say a phrase like, a feeling of blank is washing over me, or I'm getting filled up with anger right now, or stress is crashing down on me, where you actually give voice to what these emotions are and what they're doing to you, or how it feels at that moment. And just being able to name it gives you a bit more power over it. It's not going to crush you as much as you thought when you're able to name it and call it for what it is. You don't need to really you don't need to push it aside or distract yourself from it or get on the phone and what else can I distract myself with? But it's a good way to deal with it is just by calling it what it is,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So those are two of my big techniques. What do you got?
Yeah. So there's kind of basically two things that I have found helpful with this. So one is, doing hard things and taking that risk, that scary risk, whatever it is. So, so I think about a lot like for me, another one was like deciding to move out from my parents' house. This is kind of like this really scary thing. Cause like all of a sudden, like, okay, now all of my livelihood is like now dependent on me. And if I screw this up, like I don't have like a ton of savings that I can like just wait around to find another job, whatever. It was kind of terrifying. But I think doing the hard things and taking kind of some risks can be a huge part of helping with this liminal space, because one, when you do something that's hard and accomplish something or face a fear, that gives a lot of a sense of achievement, and helps you see that progression of building towards something, which is obviously going to just help with a like liminal type space because you're moving through that, and with that, to remember, this is a phrase I heard on, I can't remember who said this, so I feel really bad that I can't give proper citing
Credit.
of this. Yeah, credit. But I know it was on some podcast I listened to, probably Dave Rubin. But they basically had this term, fictions born of fear, which is just to say that we have these untruths that we believe that because of just fear, right? So here's a great one that was for me, and I think for a lot of people. If I move out of my parents' house, I leave all this security behind, and I'm now completely on my own. And if I don't make it, if something happens, my entire financial world, able to support myself, is going to come crashing down. Now that's really scary. It sounds really valid, and to some extent, it's a little bit valid. But if you're doing something like moving out of your parents' house, like if let's just say that I am to move out, like everything totally fails and falls apart, like I'm sure your parents will just have you back, right? To be like, okay, get back on your feet, try it again, So it's a fiction, right? But it's born of fear, so we get so it's like really, really scary. But to understand that like some of these fears and some of these risks that we might want to take but hold us back are just, they're born of fear. So just recognize that and just take that step, do it, because that's how you build a life. It's how you start building towards things and can find purpose in these mundane things. And which leads me to the second thing, which is to find meaning in the mundane, which has a lot to do with just changing your perspective, I think. Figuring out how your work has meaning. What is its purpose? This term, like just a cog in the machine, has a pretty bad rap because people are like, oh, I'm just like this guy stuck in the cog of the machine without it's not very purposeful. But like that's kind of false in a way. Like a cog in a machine has a very specific, very important purpose. Without that cog, the machine doesn't work. And so in a positive sense, like kind of figuring out where do you fit in this picture of things. I had one of my jobs, I used to work for a distribution company that distributed packaging, and like that's not not sexy, not whatever. But I remember listening to I believe it was a Tim Keller sermon. Tim Keller is a pastor, for those who don't know, and this doesn't. I mean, this is applicable whether you are religious or not, but especially applicable if you are religious. But he had this idea of finding meaning in the mundane, and basically, what I realized after listening to his sermon was like, okay, like I actually do have this kind of cool purpose of like, we are supplying packaging for people who do, I mean, we did a ton of food, we did a ton of like cleaning products, we did all this kind of stuff. And it's like, if you think about like actually the importance of what you're doing is like, without our business, without our job, stuff wouldn't get to people to then feed people, to then like help people do their jobs of keeping workplaces, clean or whatever. And I think in his sermon, he talks about a janitor and like, how can a janitor have like, so it's one of those jobs we typically like look down on, but actually he kind of explains how it has like this good purpose. And I think that was really important, just kind of changing your perspective can help you to find meaning in the mundane and then be okay with those in between the scene times. That's how you live between the scenes. That's how you have that purpose. And then that's what allows you to do the day-to-day to build something. And I would argue too that if you can learn how to not only live the in between the scene times well, but strive to enjoy them for what they are, it will allow you to enjoy the big scene moments even more. Because then when you're in a big scene moment, you recognize that you're in a big scene moment and you can enjoy it, and you're not just looking like, you're not just thinking like, okay, where's the next one? Like well, as soon as this is over, like then what am I going to do? Like what's my next, big thing that I can do so that I can feel affirmation from people around me because I'm doing great things. It actually allows you to sit and be present in those big scene movements and like moments and really, really enjoy the heck out of them, which I think is super important. I mean, I think that's awesome. And that's huge. So those are kind of the two things that I would say you can do. Like I said, this is still a growing thought, so maybe there's more. And if someone else can think of one, I'd love to hear it. But yeah, that's kind of what I have found in my own life to be very, very helpful. And that just helps you understand what's important, it helps you understand that like, what are the things I enjoy most? It's like, it's my relationships, it's my friendships, for me, that's like kind of it's my time.
Totally. Yeah. I really like what you said about the being able to enjoy the mundane, or mundane, the in between the scenes, like you were saying, because I think, in this culture where we just love movies and stories and fairy tales, what you don't realize is that after the big happy ending, like there's a morning after there, like you have to wake up the next morning and you have to cook breakfast and you have to go to work, assumably, so there is, the mundane stuff is always going to be there. The giant big scenes always won't. And so if you can learn to enjoy the little things and the little rhythms of your life and work and your relationships and all that stuff, like how much more rich is your life going to be? Yeah, it's fantastic.
Absolutely. I love, enjoy little things. That's a line from Zombieland, one of like my favorite movies, rule number 32. Dude, that's such a good line. Enjoy the little things, and to just figure out what are those little things that you just love. For me, it's breakfast, man. Every freaking morning, breakfast. It's awesome.
I've learned to love breakfast because of your love for breakfast.
Dude, it is unreal how good breakfast can be.
You brought the joy of breakfast back to me, man. That is a gift that's like better than Christmas gift.
Dude, I'm glad,
I can have
man.
it every day.
It is the best. Like people who like skip breakfast, I'm like, dude, you are missing out. Like you said, they're missing out, bro. Like bad.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
So I mean, that's kind of this. That's this idea. These like liminal spaces, living between the scenes. I hope we get to talk about it some more. Speaking of Ether and No, I'm about to finish his book, which is really good. Which you should read it, and then we should have him on because, as I'm reading his book, I'm like going, oh my gosh, like this is like almost exactly parallel, if not like touching to like this idea of like living between the scenes that I've had. It's like so good, and obviously he's a great writer, so it's worded a lot more elegant than I can do.
That's the New Lonely, is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's called The New Lonely. So
cool. Yeah, let's do it. Let's have him on.
So unless you have anything else to add.
Don't think so. I mean, there's so much more to talk about here, but I think like you said, we'll dig deeper
Yeah.
future podcasts. I think this was a nice little scratch the surface of both liminal space and living between the scenes.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so
great stuff, man.
Yeah, I would just encourage people then to, chew on this a little bit. If you have an idea that you think would add to this or anything to add, let us know. I think,
or tell us about your liminal space,
yeah,
or where you had to learn how to live between the scenes or something like that. We'd love to hear those stories.
Yep, yeah, what you did to help. Like, what do you find most useful in this area? Because I think coming up here, we're probably going to do an episode on a few of the emails that we have gotten from people, which have been like fantastic, like totally awesome, like very, very much surprised me. It was great. So yeah, we'd love to hear that. Again, appreciate a rating that was going to help just get this out there, grow the word, and help give us more time to do more. So yeah, thanks for joining, everybody. We really, really do appreciate it. It's awesome that we get to talk about this every week. This is a highlight of my week for sure.
Yeah, so, me too. And what's one thing that inspired you this week, Travis? It's your turn. I mean, you could do the new Lonely. Yeah.
I want to save that one because I'm not quite over it. I'm not done with it yet, and I really do want to give him a chance to come in and talk about it at some point. But
yeah, totally. I agree.
This isn't specific enough, but I'm gonna go for it because people can go search for this kind of stuff and they'll find it. But over the last 2 days, I've seen a couple of these YouTube videos on Facebook, and they kind of have to do with science. So one, I posted it yesterday. It was this freaking insane robot, literally jumping up onto these those CrossFit boxes, and then it's a robot, and there's no wires holding it up or anything. It's completely on its own. It's Boston Dynamics. If you've ever if you just want to be awe-inspired / also slightly terrified out of your mind, just go to YouTube, type in Boston Dynamics, and watch their videos of the different robots these people create, because it is if ever one of these things I saw in real life, I would poop my pants and I would run as fast as I can. It is insane, but it's also really cool and inspiring. But yeah, this thing jumps from box to box, and then it jumps and spins around and then does a freaking backflip, a robot, and it lands it. It does go to my Facebook and channel. It's insane. And I'm this is blowing my mind right now. And that stuff, I love that kind of stuff. I watched another one this morning. It was about the ocean and how deep it is. Maybe I'll find that one again and try to post it on the show notes or something. But they're just explaining how deep it is, and how deep we're able to go, where we've been, and then how much deeper it is, and it's it just kind of mind blowing. It's one of those ones, if you ever seen where they start on the scale of a cell and then slowly go back to the universe, and you're just holy crap. I love that kind of stuff. And so, nice. I mean, yeah, I people can just search for different ones, or if you have a favorite one, let me know, because I love that stuff and I'd love to watch some more. Maybe I'll post a couple in the show notes page, which would be reallyreallybadly.com/episode 12, the numbers
12. Sweet.
Yeah, so yeah, that stuff is pretty awesome to me. I think it's amazing, kind of the age that we live in. I love to think about if someone even just 100 years ago, let alone back in Roman times or something, if you were to show them some of this stuff, it'd blow them.
Totally.
I don't know what would you do? What would you do if you had no idea? Cause maybe 50 years ago, people could be oh, that's just really good CGI. But if you didn't know about if that wasn't even a thing yet, what would it cause you to
have a machine that can do this thing?
Yeah, I feel you would almost have a breakdown. You would literally just go crazy and just break down and die, because I don't know how you'd handle something like that. It's crazy. I love it. I'm so excited for where we're going in the future with technology. Because when were the Orville brothers, the Wright brothers, and it was no, you can't fly.
Yeah.
Flying's not a thing. And now we're
I know.
Not only do we fly, but we have 200 people in the same machine flying. This thing that weighs.
Yeah.
I got to tour the Denver airport a month or two ago, and we got to sit in what was it? It was some British Airways ginormous double. I'd never been on a double-decker plane before. I mean, it literally has 2 levels. and we got to sit up in the cockpit while it was being tugged, and like you're like, this thing is so tall, like like it's ginormous. Like if I were to fall out this window, I'd probably break my legs. It's that tall. And to think that this thing is like flying through the air at like, you know, thousands, tens of thousands of feet is like crazy. So crazy. Yeah. So just to think like, okay, where will we be in the next, like when I'm a grandpa? Like it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be so awesome.
Yeah, totally.
So anyway, sorry, that was like a total tangent, like rant. That was way longer than it needed to be, but
I love it.
Go check out some cool science.
Lots to be inspired about.
Yeah, go check out some cool science videos and send them to me. So
that's awesome. Sweet.
All right. 'Twas
Alrighty.
good.
Yeah, man. It was great.
All right. I'll see you, and I'll see everybody else. I won't see everybody else, but I'll talk to everyone else, and they'll hear me next week. And you.
Next week. Sounds good. I will do the same.
Cool. I love you, bro, and we love all of you
man.
all.